Two men in two cities in roughly the same years of American television. Both decided they were tired of being who they were. Both went back to school. Both kept books on their shelves. Both invented new versions of themselves to live inside. One of them was a chemistry teacher in New Mexico. The other was a drug lieutenant in West Baltimore. One of them got everything he ever wanted. The other was killed at the construction site of the apartment building he was developing. The strange thing is, almost nobody talks about how closely these two men rhyme. Almost nobody talks about how Breaking Bad and The Wire, the two shows people argue about more than any other shows of their era, are basically the same story, told from opposite sides of one quiet question. The question is about America. The answer the two shows give could not be further apart. Welcome to Between the Episodes. Let's get started. Section 1. Two premieres, two theses. Pull up the very first scene of The Wire, June 2nd, 2002. A man named Jimmy McNulty is sitting on the steps of a stoop in West Baltimore late at night. There is a dead body on the sidewalk. Red and blue lights from the police cars wash over the scene. A young man sits next to McNulty, a witness, and the two of them are talking about how the dead kid earned his nickname. The dead kid was called Snot Boogie. McNulty asks the witness to walk him through what happened. The witness explains that Snot Boogie always tried to steal the money from a craps game in the alley. Every Friday night, the same craps game. Every Friday night, Snot Boogie would wait for the pot to get big, grab the cash, and run. And every Friday night, the other players would catch him, beat him up, and take the money back. This had been happening for years. Then, on this particular Friday, somebody just shot him instead. McNulty is confused. He asks the witness, if Snot Boogie always did this, why did you let him into the game? Why didn't you just keep him out? And the witness looks at him like the question is the strangest thing he has ever heard. Then he says the line that the entire show is built on. He says, "Got to. This America, man." That is the cold open of The Wire. No theme song yet, no cast credits. Just two men on a stoop, a dead body, and one sentence about what kind of country they live in. Now pull up the very first scene of Breaking Bad, January 20th, 2008. The screen is blank for a moment. Then the camera shows a pair of khaki pants drifting through the bright blue New Mexico sky. Just the pants, floating. They land in the middle of an empty desert road, and a beat-up RV comes roaring around the corner and runs them over without slowing down. Inside the RV, a middle-aged man is driving in his underwear. He is wearing a gas mask. There is a gun on the dashboard. Two bodies are sliding around in the back of the RV among broken glass beakers and yellow chemical liquid. The man is panicking. He swerves the RV off the road and crashes it into a ditch. He climbs out, still in his underwear, still wearing the gas mask. He pulls out a small camera. He records a quick goodbye message to his family. Then he stands in the middle of the desert road, gun in hand, listening to the sound of police sirens getting closer. That is the cold open of Breaking Bad. No introduction to the city, no witness, no conversation. One man, alone, mid-collapse, in a frame that contains nothing else. These two openings tell you everything you need to know about what these two shows are going to spend the next several years doing. They are not just different stories. They are different theories of how stories work. The Wire is interested in the world around the body. McNulty is the cop in the scene, but he is not the point. The witness is not the point. Even Snot Boogie, the dead man, is not the point. The point is, the country that produced this Friday night, this craps game, this weekly beating, and the casual shrug with which everyone involved seems to accept it. Got to. This America, man. The witness is not making a joke. He genuinely cannot imagine running the game any other way. The system as it exists is the only system there is. Snot Boogie kept stealing because that is what Snot Boogie did. The game kept letting him in because that is what the game did. And finally, somebody shot him, because that is what guns do when they are around for long enough. Nobody chose any of this. The whole thing just happened, the way weather happens. Breaking Bad is interested in the body. The man in the underwear is the entire frame. The desert behind him is empty. There is no city he comes from, no neighborhood he is connected to, no witness explaining how things got this way. Whatever happened in that RV happened because of choices this one man made. The viewer does not know yet who he is, what he did, or why he is recording a goodbye to his family in the middle of nowhere. But the visual logic of the scene is clear from the first second. This is going to be a story about a person. One person, mostly. Everything else in the frame is going to fall away to make room for him. David Simon, the man who created The Wire, was a former crime reporter for the Baltimore Sun. He spent more than a decade actually walking the streets the show takes place on. When he sat down to design the series, he had a very specific idea about what kind of story he wanted to tell. He has said many times in interviews that The Wire was meant to function like an ancient Greek tragedy. In Greek tragedy, the gods up on Mount Olympus toy with the lives of mortal humans. The mortals think they are making their own choices. They are not. The gods have already decided what is going to happen. The drama is watching human beings struggle against fates they cannot escape. Simon kept that idea, but swapped out the gods. He said that in the modern American city, the gods are not on Mount Olympus anymore. The gods are the giant systems we have built around ourselves. The police department, the school system, City Hall, the drug trade, the newspaper, the unions. These institutions are the new gods, and they are just as careless and cruel as the old ones. Real human beings work inside them and try to do good things, but the institutions themselves are bigger than any one person, and they grind down anyone who tries to fight them. That worldview is already operating in the very first scene of The Wire. The witness is not lying when he says, "got to." He really cannot imagine the game working any other way, because for him, the game is not a game. It is the world. The drug corner is not separate from America. The drug corner is America. And the institution of the corner has its own rules, its own gods, its own logic. And those rules will keep producing dead snot boogies forever, no matter who happens to be sitting on the stoop watching it. Vince Gilligan, the man who created Breaking Bad, came from a completely different background. He had spent years writing for The X-Files, a show about two FBI agents investigating strange, paranormal cases. The X-Files was built around character. Two people in the middle of a frame, talking, reacting, changing. When Gilligan started thinking about Breaking Bad, he had one specific idea, and he repeated it in every interview he ever gave about the show. He said he wanted to take Mr. Chips and turn him into Scarface. Mr. Chips is the kind, gentle schoolteacher from a 1939 movie. Scarface is the ruthless drug kingpin from the 1983 Brian De Palma film. Gilligan wanted to write a show that started with one and ended with the other. He said television had always been good at keeping characters frozen in place, the same person at the start of every season as at the end, so that the show could go on forever. he wanted to do the opposite. He wanted change to be the entire engine of the show. He wanted to watch a normal man become a monster, slowly, choice by choice, in a way that you could trace back to the very first wrong move. That worldview is operating in the very first scene of Breaking Bad. The man in the underwear is by himself. There is no witness on a stoop explaining what kind of country he lives in. There is no system around him grinding him down. There is just him, his choices, and the gun in his hand. Whatever he is about to do next, he will do because of who he is. Whatever happens to him, he will deserve. Now look at the two scenes side by side and notice what each show is leaving out. The Wire pilot does not put a single major character in close-up for the first several minutes. The camera stays at a distance. McNulty is shot from the side, a little too far away, his face partly in shadow. The witness is shot the same way. The two of them feel like figures inside a larger picture, not heroes inside a story. The dead body on the sidewalk is just one shape among many. There is no music. There is no swelling string section telling you how to feel. The audio is mostly the police radio, distant traffic, and the conversation. Everything visual and everything sonic is doing the same job, which is telling the viewer that nothing in this scene is more important than anything else in it. The world is the subject. The Breaking Bad pilot does the exact opposite. The camera stays close to Walter White. His face fills the frame. The desert behind him stretches out into infinite blue sky and red dirt, but the desert is there to make him look small and alone, not to suggest that the desert itself matters. There is heightened, stylized music. There is a clear sense of a story moment. A man at the end of his rope, recording a final message. Even though we do not know him yet, the camera is already telling us that he is the show. Everything visual and everything sonic is doing the same job, which is telling the viewer that this man is more important than anything around him. These are two different bets about what makes a story worth watching. The Wire is betting that you will care more about a city than about any one person inside it. That seems like a strange bet to make, because cities cannot give speeches, and cities do not have love interests, and cities cannot be played by a famous actor. But Simon believed that if you spent enough time inside one place, you would start to see the place itself as the main character. The cops, the dealers, the dock workers, the politicians, the kids, the journalists. All of them would be parts of a single body, and the body was Baltimore. The drama would come from watching that body slowly fail to heal itself. Breaking Bad is betting that you will follow one man into hell if the man is built carefully enough. That bet is much older. Most movies are built on it. Most novels are built on it. The whole tradition of dramatic storytelling, going back thousands of years, is built on it. One person wants something. One person tries to get it. One person changes along the way. Gilligan was not doing anything new by choosing this structure. What was new was the idea of running it for 62 episodes, watching every single moral compromise, every single small lie, every single drop of poison get added to the cup, until at the end you looked at the man in the frame and could no longer recognize him. Both shows are honest about what they are, right from the first minute. The Wire never tries to pretend it is going to be about Jimmy McNulty. McNulty is in the first scene. He is in many later scenes. He is in the last scene. But the show keeps pushing him to the side whenever it needs to look at someone else. By season 2, the show has basically dropped him for long stretches in order to look at the docks. By season 4, he barely appears for half the episodes, because the show needs that space for the 4 schoolboys. The Wire is not afraid to move on without him, because he was never the point. Breaking Bad never tries to pretend it is going to be about Albuquerque. Yes, the show uses the city. Yes, it loves the desert and the diners and the strange flat light of New Mexico. But every shot is built around Walter White. If Walt is not in the scene is preparing for Walt to enter the scene. If Walt has not spoken in a while, the show is preparing for Walt to speak. The other characters, even the great ones, even Jesse and Mike and Gus and Hank, are all defined by their orbit around the man in the gas mask. They circle him. The show is the gravity of him. There is a small detail about the Breaking Bad opening that almost nobody talks about, and it is worth slowing down on. The pants in the sky. They come out of nowhere. They float. They land in the road. The RV runs them over. That image is the entire show in 3 seconds. A man has lost his pants. Pants are dignity. Pants are the basic adult thing you put on every morning before going to work. The man has lost his, and they are flying through the sky, and the vehicle he is driving is destroying them on the way down. The pilot is telling the viewer before any plot has happened that this is going to be a story about a man losing his dignity, in pieces, watching it spin away from him while he barrels forward. By the end of the show, a lot of things will have flown out of Walter White's life, and most of them will have ended up in worse shape than the pants. The Wire opening has a small detail like that too. The witness, after he says, "Got to," this America man, looks at McNulty, and there is the faintest hint of a smile. Not a smile of cruelty, not a smile of victory. A small, tired, almost embarrassed smile. The smile of a man who has just explained something obvious to somebody who should already understand it. The smile is saying, "You are a Baltimore cop, McNulty, and you do not get how Baltimore works." That smile is the entire show. The Wire will spend 5 seasons proving that the people inside the system understand the system better than the people who think they are running it. The people on the corner know more about how America works than the people in City Hall. That is the joke. That is the tragedy. That is the thesis. 2 shows, 2 openings, 2 completely different ideas about where meaning lives in a story. One says meaning lives inside a person, in the choices that person makes, and you can watch that person change all the way down to nothing. The other says meaning lives inside a place, in the rules that place enforces, and the people are just the parts of the body those rules use to keep functioning. You can watch either show without thinking about any of this. Both of them work as straight entertainment. Breaking Bad is one of the most exciting hours of television you will ever sit through. The Wire is one of the most absorbing slow burns ever made. But once you notice what each show is doing in its very first scene, you cannot unnotice it. Every later moment in both shows is just an expansion of those opening minutes. The man in the desert keeps making choices. The city on the stoop keeps producing bodies. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. So now, there is a question worth asking. If these 2 shows are built on opposite bets about how stories work, then who is each show really about? Breaking Bad seems easy. Walter White. Done. But The Wire, with no main character, with the city as the protagonist, with the camera always pulling back from any single face, has a harder problem. How do you write a 5-season drama with no hero at the center of it? How do you keep an audience watching when there is nobody for them to root for? The answer is one of the strangest and most ambitious choices in television history. And it is where these 2 shows really start to look like opposite sides of the same coin. Section 2. One protagonist versus no protagonist. The strangest thing about The Wire the thing that almost killed it before it ever found an audience, is that it does not really have a main character. 5 seasons, 60 episodes, hundreds of speaking roles, and no single person at the center of it. This was a deliberate choice. David Simon and his writing partner Ed Burns sat down before they wrote the pilot and decided that whatever this show was going to be, it was not going to be a normal cop show. Normal cop shows have a hero detective. The hero detective gets a case. The hero detective solves the case. The hero detective comes back next week to solve another case. Audiences had been watching that exact pattern for 50 years. Simon and Burns wanted to do something else. And the only way to do something else was to refuse the basic deal that television had always made with its viewers, which was, here is one person, follow them. So they made a show with dozens of people, and they refused to tell the audience which one to follow. Jimmy McNulty is the closest thing The Wire has to a lead. He is a homicide detective with the Baltimore Police Department. He drinks too much. He cheats on his wife. He is brilliant at his job and impossible to manage. He is in the first scene of the show, and he is in the last scene of the show. If you forced a casting director at gunpoint to pick a star for The Wire, they would pick him. Dominic West, the actor playing him, has the face for it, the smirk for it, the swagger for it. But the show keeps pushing him to the side. In Season 2, it sends him to Harbor Patrol so it can spend most of the season at the docks with a completely different group of characters. In Season 4, it barely uses him for entire stretches because the show needs that space for the 4 boys in middle school. By the time he comes back to the front of the story in Season 5, he is doing something so reckless and dishonest that the show is no longer asking you to root for him. He is just one more person inside the city, doing one more dumb thing. This is not how television works. This is not how television had ever worked. Compare that to Breaking Bad, which is built around the opposite idea so completely that you almost forget it is a choice. From the first frame of the pilot to the last shot of the finale, the camera is on Walter White. If Walt is not in the scene exists to set up Walt entering the scene. If Walt is dead in the cold open of an episode, the rest of the episode is leading you back to the moment of his death. The other characters, no matter how brilliant, no matter how beloved, are defined by their relationship to him. Jesse Pinkman, his partner. Skylar White, his wife. Hank Schrader, his brother-in-law and the cop chasing him. Gus Fring, his rival. Mike Ehrmantraut, his enforcer. Saul Goodman, his lawyer. Each one of them is fascinating. Each one of them could carry their own show. And in fact, several of them did, which is part of why Better Call Saul exists. But within Breaking Bad itself, all of them are planets, and Walter White is the sun. Vince Gilligan made this choice on purpose, and he made it loudly. The pitch he used to sell Breaking Bad to the network was a single sentence. He wanted to take Mr. Chips and turn him into Scarface. Mr. Chips is the sweet old school teacher from a black and white movie released in 1939. Scarface is the murderous Cuban drug lord played by Al Pacino in the 1983 film of the same name. Gilligan wanted to write a story where one became the other, slowly, on screen, in front of you, over the course of dozens of hours. That pitch only works if you have a single character at the center. You cannot turn Mr. Chips into Scarface if Mr. Chips is sharing the show with 12 other people who get equal screen time. The transformation is the point, and the transformation requires a face the audience can keep watching, episode after episode, season after season. looking for the small shifts that add up to a giant one. Walter White, at the start of the pilot, in his green shirt and tan slacks, hesitating before he takes a sip of cheap wine at his own birthday party, has to be visibly, recognizably the same man who, 6 years later, is calmly threatening his own wife in their kitchen and telling her he is the one who knocks. The audience has to be able to draw the line between those two versions of him. The whole show is the line. Now hold those two design choices next to each other. One man in close-up, changing slowly. A whole city in wide shot, refusing to change at all. They are not just different stories. They are different ideas about what a story is for. Gilligan inherited a tradition that goes back thousands of years. The single hero in the middle of the frame. One person wants something. One person makes choices. One person is changed by those choices. You can find that structure in ancient plays and in old novels and in almost every Hollywood movie ever made. It is the most familiar shape a story can take. Gilligan was not inventing it. He was just running it, harder than anyone had ever run it on television. By stretching the change across 62 episodes and refusing to let his hero slip into safe routines. Simon was reaching for a much older and stranger tradition. He has said in interview after interview that The Wire was meant to feel like ancient Greek tragedy. He has named the playwrights specifically: Aeschylus, Sophocles, Euripides. He has said the show was an attempt to update those ancient stories for the modern American city. In a Greek tragedy, the gods up on Mount Olympus are bored, careless, and powerful. They mess with the lives of human beings down on the ground for reasons that have nothing to do with whether the humans deserve it. The humans struggle. The humans fight. The humans believe they are choosing their own paths. Then the gods crush them, and the play ends, and the audience walks home, knowing that the universe does not love them. Simon has said the gods of The Wire are not really gods. The gods are the giant systems we live inside. The police department, the drug trade, the school system, City Hall, the newspaper, the unions. These institutions are bigger than any one person, older than any one person, and meaner than any one person. They do not care if the people inside them are good or bad, smart or dumb, hard-working or lazy. They will grind down anyone who tries to fight them, and they will reward anyone who agrees to play along. And they will keep going long after the individual humans inside them have been used up and replaced. A Greek tragedy cannot have a single hero in the modern sense. The whole point of Greek tragedy is that the hero is small and the gods are large. If you put one hero at the center and let them win, you have stopped writing tragedy and started writing something else. So The Wire could not have a single main character. It would have ruined the whole thing it was trying to do. The minute you give the audience one person to root for and let that person beat the system, you are telling them that the system can be beaten. Simon did not believe that, and he refused to write a show that pretended otherwise. Watch what happens to anyone in The Wire who tries to beat the system on their own. Bunny Colvin, a police major nearing retirement, gets fed up with the failure of the war on drugs. He sets up 3 small zones in his district where dealers can sell openly without being arrested. The plan, called Hamsterdam by the people inside it, actually works. Felony rates in his district drop by 14% in 5 weeks. Then the politicians find out, decide it is too dangerous for their careers, and force Colvin to retire at a lower rank with a smaller pension. The job offer he had lined up at Johns Hopkins gets pulled. He gets buried. The system protects itself. Stringer Bell, the second in command of the Barksdale drug crew, decides he wants to leave the streets and become a real businessman. He takes economics classes at Baltimore City Community College. He keeps a copy of Adam Smith on his shelf. He tries to invest his drug money in real estate development. A corrupt politician named Clay Davis takes most of his money and gives him nothing in return. His own boss puts a hit on him. Two enemies catch him at a construction site, corner him in an empty building, and shoot him to death. The system protects itself. Frank Sobotka, the head of a stevedores union at the Baltimore docks, tries to keep his dying union alive by smuggling for the wrong people, hoping to use the bribe money to fund a political fight to bring shipping work back. He gets in over his head. His nephew gets murdered. His son ends up arrested, and he himself ends up dead in the harbor. The system protects itself. The pattern is the entire show. Anyone who tries to be the hero gets eaten. The Wire is a tragedy on purpose, and the tragedy only works if no single person can rise above the city long enough to fix it. Breaking Bad runs the opposite engine. The whole reason to watch is that one man does rise. He starts as a nobody, a high school chemistry teacher with terminal lung cancer, and he climbs over 6 years into the position of the most feared meth manufacturer in the American Southwest. He builds an empire. He kills his rivals. He outsmarts the DEA. He becomes, for a stretch, exactly the king he believed he should have been all along. Then he loses everything, of course, because Breaking Bad is also a kind of tragedy. But it is a different shape of tragedy. Walt's downfall comes from his own pride, his own choices, his own inability to walk away when he had enough. There is no system above him deciding his fate. There is just him, and the things he did, and the bill that finally comes due. He is destroyed by what he chose to become. The show keeps that frame all the way to the end. In the final season, Walt finally admits to his wife that he did not do any of it for the family. He did it because he liked it. He was good at it. And he was alive when he did it. And he wanted that feeling more than he wanted anything else. And he is willing to say so out loud, now that there is nothing left to lose. That admission is the entire engine of the show in one sentence. He did it. He chose it. He is responsible. The cancer did not corrupt him. The desperation did not corrupt him. The corruption was already in him, and the cancer just gave him the excuse to let it out. By saying it, he is taking the shape of the show seriously. The shape of the show is, one man changes himself, and the change is entirely his. You could not write that admission for any character in The Wire and have it land the same way. Stringer Bell could not say, "I did it because I liked it." Stringer did it because he was born in West Baltimore, and the only path to real money he could see was the corner. McNulty could not say, "I cheated on my wife and ruined my career because I chose to." McNulty did those things because the police department he worked for rewarded showboating and punished real police work. And his marriage was already collapsing under the weight of a job that ate every hour of his life. The Wire keeps reminding you that the choice is never as clean as the people inside it want to believe. The system was already shaping the choice before the person ever got there. Breaking Bad keeps reminding you of the opposite. The system is not the story. Walter White had a comfortable life. A house, a wife, a son, a baby on the way. A teaching job, even if it was beneath his ability. A part-time job at a car wash that humiliated him, sure, but a roof and food and health and family. He was not a man with no options. He was a man who looked at his options and decided he wanted more. And once he started taking more, he could not stop. And the show is interested in why. Why him? Why now? What is it inside this specific man that, given the smallest excuse, turned him into the worst version of himself? That kind of question only works when you have one face to ask it of. The Wire would not let you ask it. The Wire would tell you the question is wrong. The Wire would say, why this man does not matter, because there are 100,000 of him in this city, and they are all making the same choice. And the city has been producing them for generations, and it will keep producing them no matter what this one man does. Breaking Bad would tell you the question is the only thing that matters. The man is not a category. The man is a person. And the person had reasons. And the reasons are worth watching for 62 hours. Both shows are right. They just disagree about where the truth lives. One says the truth lives in the person. The other says the truth lives in the place. And once you accept that disagreement, every other choice each show makes starts to make sense. Why the camera moves the way it moves. Why characters die when they die. Why some scenes feel like opera and other scenes feel like a documentary. All of it is downstream of that one decision in the writer's room, before the first script was finished, about who, if anyone, the show was actually going to be about. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. There is one more thing worth noticing. Both shows believe in fate. Both shows believe their main figures, whether one or many, are going to end up broken. The difference is in who or what is doing the breaking. In Breaking Bad, Walt breaks himself. In The Wire, the city does it for them. And once two shows disagree about that, the actual look of the shows, the way they shoot a face or a street or a sky, has to disagree too. One show is going to be lit and framed and scored like an opera, because operas are about single doomed people. The other is going to be lit and framed and scored like a piece of journalism, because journalism is about the world that produces the doomed people. The visual languages of both shows were built around the original argument, and they are about as opposite as two American crime dramas have ever been. Section 3. The Sergio Leone West versus the Charles Dickens City. If you watch a random scene from Breaking Bad with the sound turned off, you can usually guess what is happening. Not from the plot, from the picture. The picture is doing a job. A man stands at the edge of a yellow desert, and the camera is so far below him, and so far below the horizon, that he looks like he is being crushed by the sky. Or a man stands at the head of a meeting table, and the camera is tilted up at him from chest level, making him look 10 feet tall and unkillable. Or two men sit across from each other in a diner booth, and one of them is in a clean white shirt under bright, soft light, and the other is in a leather jacket, lit from below by the dirty glow of a street lamp. The frame has already told you who is winning. Now do the same thing with The Wire. Watch a random scene with the sound off. Most of the time, you cannot tell what is happening just from the picture. Two cops are standing in front of a row of broken-down houses, talking. The light on their faces is the same light that is on the houses. There is no special angle making one of them look bigger than the other. The camera is at eye level, sitting maybe 20 feet away, the way a person on the sidewalk would see them if they happened to walk by. There is no music. The sound is just the wind, traffic, somebody arguing across the street. You have to listen to the words to know what is happening. The picture is not trying to tell you anything by itself. This is on purpose. Both shows worked very hard to look exactly the way they look. They were just working toward two completely different goals. Vince Gilligan and his cinematographer Michael Slovis made one of the most styled shows in the history of American television. From the very first episode, Breaking Bad was shot on real film, not video, even though shooting on film was already going out of fashion when the show started in 2008. They wanted the slightly heavier, slightly grainier feel that film gives. They wanted the colors to look painted, almost. They wanted the show to feel less like television and more like the kind of movies they had grown up loving. Gilligan said in many interviews that the look he was chasing was not really the look of a normal cop drama. The model in his head was the Western. Specifically, the Westerns made by an Italian director named Sergio Leone in the 1960s. Movies like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Movies where the camera was always finding ways to make the empty desert feel like a stage. Movies where a single man's face could be held in extreme close-up for 10 seconds without a single line of dialogue, and you could feel the whole story happening behind his eyes. Gilligan and Slovis wanted to do that with Walter White. They wanted New Mexico to feel like the West. They wanted Albuquerque to feel like the kind of frontier town where bad men come to do worse things. They wanted the yellow dirt and the blue sky and the long flat horizon to feel mythic, like a stage set for one final showdown. Slovis said in an interview that he and Gilligan even tried to convince the studio, Sony, and the network, AMC, to let them shoot the show in a wider, more cinema-shaped frame. They were turned down. They settled for the standard television frame, but they shot inside it the way you would shoot a movie. Watch how Walt stands in the desert across the run of the show. Early on, he is small in the frame. The desert dwarfs him. The sky is huge, and he is a tiny, green-shirted dot at the bottom of it. By season 4, the camera is angled up at him, low to the ground, so the same desert and the same sky now sit behind him like a backdrop, and he looms in front of them. The sky used to be on top of him. Now it is behind him. By season 5, in the famous scene where he tells his wife that he is the one who knocks, the camera is so close to his face that the rest of the kitchen has fallen out of focus. He is the entire image. The space that used to crush him no longer exists. That is not realism. That is operatic. It is the visual story of a man becoming larger than his world, told in pictures, episode after episode. The camera is always making an argument about who Walt is at this moment. Then there is the color. Breaking Bad is one of the most color-coded shows ever made. Every main character has a palette assigned to them, and the palette tracks who they are at any given point. Walt wears greens for most of the show, and the green darkens and gets sicker looking as he gets worse. Skyler, his wife, wears blues, and the blues get more washed out and more drained as her marriage dies. Marie, the sister-in-law, wears purple to the point of obsession, and the purple is one of the running visual jokes of the show. Hank, the brother-in-law cop, wears tans and yellows. Even minor characters get tagged this way. Once you start looking for it, you cannot stop seeing it. The show even tracks ideas with color, not just people. Money is yellow, often. Death is bright. The blue meth that Walt cooks is so visually striking that it becomes a brand inside the show. And the brand stands in for Walt's pride. The show is using color the way a comic book uses color. It is helping you keep track of the moral position of every person on screen at every minute, even when you are not consciously paying attention. Breaking Bad also loves what you might call impossible camera angles. The show became famous for them. A camera mounted inside a kitchen drawer, looking up at Walt as he reaches in for a knife. A camera at the bottom of a swimming pool, looking up through the water at a pink teddy bear floating on the surface. A camera on the front of a Roomba, sliding across the floor. A camera in the dirt of a freshly dug grave, looking up at the men with the shovels. None of these shots are realistic. No real person ever sees the world from these angles. The shots are there to make you feel something about the moment, by giving you a viewpoint no human being would ever have. All of this together, the cinema-style framing, the color-coded clothes, the impossible angles, adds up to a show that is constantly telling you how to feel. Every choice the camera makes is a small instruction. Look at this. Be afraid. Be impressed. Be sickened. Be in awe. The show is operating like an opera. It is loud in the best way. The volume is part of the meaning. Now turn to The Wire and watch the same kind of scene play out. Two characters at a table. A confrontation. Stakes high. The camera will be at eye level. The light on both faces will be roughly the same. There will be no swelling music telling you which side to root for. The angles will be normal, the kind of angles a documentary crew would use if they were following these people around. If a window is in the shot, it will probably be a real window, with real Baltimore daylight coming through it. The clothes will be whatever those characters would actually be wearing on a Tuesday afternoon. There is no Walt Green or Skylar Blue. People wear what people wear. The Wire's first cinematographer was a woman named Uta Brizovitz. She had been a painter before she became a director of photography, and she has talked about how that background shaped her approach to the show. She did not want to draw attention to the camera. She wanted the camera to feel invisible, like a quiet observer who happened to be standing in the right place at the right time. She also was not shooting on a soundstage. The Wire shot on actual locations in actual Baltimore neighborhoods, including some where real police activity was happening on the same street while the production was filming. They had to stop shooting on at least one occasion because there was a sniper on a nearby roof. The realism that comes through on screen is not entirely a craft choice. Some of it is the city pressing in on the production, whether the production wanted it to or not. David Simon's comparison for the show was not a film. It was a writer. He kept saying The Wire was meant to feel like a Charles Dickens novel. Dickens was a British novelist from the 1800s who wrote enormous, sprawling books about London. His books had dozens and dozens of characters from every level of society. Rich men in clubs, poor children in slums, lawyers, thieves, servants, politicians, orphans, murderers. The plots wandered. Whole sections of the book would belong to a character who had not appeared before. The city of London in those books almost felt alive on its own, a giant body breathing through all of these tiny, different lives. That is what Simon was after. Baltimore as the body. Every character a different organ. The novel form, not the movie form. So the look of the show had to be the look of a novel turned into pictures, which is a strange thing to aim for because novels do not look like anything. They are made of words. What Simon and his directors and cinematographers seem to have decided is that the closest visual version of the novel feeling was a kind of plain, unpushy realism. Look at the world the way the world actually looks. Trust the words and the performances to do the heavy lifting. Do not let the camera turn anyone into a hero or a villain by making them look bigger or smaller than they are. This is why The Wire feels almost flat at first if you come to it from a show like Breaking Bad. Nothing is screaming for your attention. There are no impossible angles. There is no music telling you when to gasp. The colors are the colors of Baltimore. Brown brick, dirty white siding, gray sky, faded blue uniforms. Whatever was actually in the room when the scene was shot. You have to lean in to get what the show is doing, because the show is not leaning out toward you. The other thing The Wire almost never does is the close-up. Breaking Bad lives in close-ups. Walter White's face fills the frame in scene after scene, often in extreme close-up, sometimes with only one of his eyes visible, the rest of his face cut off by the edge. The camera wants you inside his head. The Wire stays back. Most of the show is shot in medium and wide shots. You see the characters as bodies in spaces, surrounded by other bodies, by buildings, by neighborhoods, by their jobs. You almost never get the kind of huge close-up that turns a face into a landscape. Even in moments of high emotion, even when somebody is dying, the camera tends to keep its distance. That is a very specific argument the show is making with its camera. It is saying that no single person is ever big enough to take over the frame. The frame is the city. The people pass through. Even the way each show handles violence comes out of these two different visual ideas. Breaking Bad's violence is operatic. A man's face is blown half off in slow, almost ceremonial detail. A whole cartel of gangsters drops to the floor of a poolside in choreographed slow motion. A bomb goes off in a nursing home, and the show holds on the wreckage for several beats. The violence is a spectacle, and the camera treats it like one. The Wire's violence is short. Most of the gunfights last a few seconds. People get shot and fall down, and the camera does not linger. Real street shootings happen in flashes, and the show is committed to that truth. Nobody dies in slow motion. Nobody's death is given an opera. Bodhi Broaddus, one of the most beloved characters on the show, gets gunned down at the end of season 4 in the corner he was raised on, and the entire scene is over almost as soon as it begins. The show does not turn his death into an event. It just ends him, the way the city ends people every day. You could argue that Breaking Bad's violence is dishonest because it is so beautiful, and that The Wire's violence is honest because it refuses to be. You could also argue that Breaking Bad is using beauty to make a point about how violence feels from the inside of the criminal life, where everything does feel like an opera, where every gunshot does feel like a moment of fate. Both arguments are right in their own ways. Both shows are using the camera to tell their version of the truth. They just disagree about which truth is worth telling. Take one more example: the desert and the city. Breaking Bad uses the New Mexico desert almost like a character. Long, slow, beautiful shots of empty land, pink and orange skies, the horizon stretching out forever. The desert is the place where Walt does his worst things, but it is also the place that makes him feel free. The look of those shots is meant to be wide open and a little holy. Even when terrible things are happening in them, the desert itself remains beautiful. The Wire uses Baltimore the same way, but the look is the opposite. Long, slow shots of empty city corners, faded brick, boarded-up windows, patches of grass growing between concrete, trash in the gutters. The city is the place where everything in the show happens, but the show never makes it look mythic. It just makes it look like itself. Tired, used, real. There is a beauty in those shots too, but it is the beauty of a thing that has been left alone for a long time, not the beauty of a stage. Two shows, two pictures of America. One is the West, framed like the last day of an old story, lit like the inside of a painting. The other is the city, framed like a photograph nobody bothered to clean up before printing, lit like a Tuesday at 3 in the afternoon. Both are honest. Both are doing exactly what they were built to do. And both are making a quiet argument in every single frame about what kind of country these people are living in. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The visual disagreement is just the surface, though. Underneath it, both shows are also disagreeing about something even older than the camera. They are disagreeing about how a story should be shaped over time. One is built like a movie. The other is built like a book. And once you look at how each show actually arranges its episodes, that disagreement turns out to be even bigger than the look of the picture. Section 4. The novel versus the film. David Simon got tired of people watching The Wire wrong. In 2012, 4 years after the show ended, he gave an interview where he basically told television critics they had been doing their jobs incorrectly the entire time the show was on the air. His point was simple. Critics had been reviewing The Wire one episode at a time, every Sunday, the way they reviewed every other show. And Simon felt that this was like reviewing a novel, one chapter at a time. Nobody, he said, would read 3 chapters of a book and then publish a long opinion piece about what the author was trying to say. You read the whole book, then you talked about it. The Wire was a book pretending to be a TV show, and the audience and the critics and the network had all been treating it as a TV show, and that mismatch had cost the show real viewers. He was not wrong. The Wire was designed from the start to be a novel. Each season was a separate book inside a longer epic, and each episode was a chapter inside that book. Simon has named the comparison many times. He has mentioned Moby Dick. He has mentioned the giant Russian novel War and Peace, which has 15 separate sections inside it, each broken into many smaller chapters, originally released to readers a piece at a time over 5 years. The Wire ran for 5 years too, and it was meant to be read the same way. To make this work, Simon did something almost no other television show was doing. He hired actual novelists to write episodes. Not screenwriters who had also written novels. Novelists. The crime novelist George Pelecanos. The crime novelist Richard Price. The crime novelist Dennis Lehane. These were men who spent their lives building 400-page books, slowly, with the patience and structure that long fiction demands. Simon brought them into the writer's room because he wanted the show to feel like the kind of thing they would write, not the kind of thing television usually wrote. The result is a show that almost refuses to behave like television. There are no cliffhangers in the normal sense. Episodes do not end with somebody pointing a gun at somebody else and the screen cutting to black. Big moments tend to happen in the second-to-last episode of each season, and the actual season finale is usually quieter. A long, slow look at where everyone has ended up. Storylines build for entire seasons before paying off. New characters get introduced in episode 3 of a season and barely get a line of dialogue until episode 8. None of this is broken writing. All of it is how novels work. Take the way The Wire introduces new worlds. Season 2 ends the Barksdale drug case from Season 1 in a way that feels almost final. The major characters from Season 1 are still around, but the entire focus of Season 2 shifts to the Baltimore docks, to a group of stevedores led by a man named Frank Sobotka. Most television shows would never do this. You spend a whole season making the audience care about one set of characters and one storyline, and then in the next season, you pull most of those characters into the background and ask the audience to care about a totally different group of people in a totally different part of the city. Audiences hated this when it first happened. The viewership dipped. Some people quit the show. Simon did it anyway, because the book he was writing was not about the Barksdale crew. The book was about Baltimore. To tell the truth about Baltimore, he had to keep moving the camera. Season 3 swung back toward City Hall and the political machine. Season 4 went into the middle schools and followed 4 boys through an academic year. Season 5 went into the offices of the Baltimore Sun newspaper. Each season opened a new institution, but the previous ones did not disappear. They kept running in the background, and characters from earlier seasons kept reappearing in smaller and smaller roles. Just like real people in a real city, keep existing whether or not you are paying attention to them. That is novel architecture. Take a giant book like War and Peace. The novel begins with a group of aristocrats at a fancy party in St. Petersburg. By the middle of the book, the focus has shifted to soldiers fighting Napoleon's army on a battlefield. By the end, it is shifted again to family life and farming and questions about what history actually is. The characters from the opening party are still there, but they have been pushed off to the side to make room for the new material. The book is bigger than any one of them. The Wire is built the same way. Now take Breaking Bad and notice that it is doing the exact opposite thing. Breaking Bad is not built like a novel. It is built like a long film. 62 episodes of one continuous story, with one main character, one main question, and a structure where every single episode is feeding into the next one without ever pausing to look at anything else. Vince Gilligan and his writer's room treated the show like a giant movie that just happened to be released in pieces. Almost every episode begins with a cold open that ties directly into the events of the previous episode, or the long-running plot. Almost every episode ends with a moment that pushes you straight into the next one. There are no detours. There is no Season 2 of Breaking Bad, where the show suddenly stops being about Walt and follows a group of strangers at the docks. Every minute of the show, all the way through, is part of one tightening line. The single best example of this is something Gilligan and his writers planted at the start of Season 2 and did not pay off until the end of Season 2. Across 4 separate episodes that year, Breaking Bad opened with strange, silent, black and white scenes of a teddy bear with a missing eye floating in a swimming pool. Police and forensics workers in white suits combed through the wreckage of something that had clearly happened in Walt's backyard. The cold opens were eerie and meaningless when you first watched them. They had nothing to do with the rest of the episode they were attached to. Then, at the end of the season, the show revealed what they had been building toward. Walt, indirectly, had let a young woman named Jane die from a heroin overdose in front of him. Jane was the daughter of an air traffic controller. Her father, destroyed by grief, came back to work too soon, made a mistake while guiding planes, and caused 2 passenger jets to collide in mid-air over Albuquerque. The teddy bear had fallen out of the wreckage and into Walt's pool. The 4 episode titles those cold opens were attached to, when read in order, spelled out a sentence. 737, down over ABQ. The plane number falling over Albuquerque. That kind of writing is film writing. It is a single long story with a careful, deliberate, planted payoff that only makes sense if you have been watching every episode in order, paying close attention. Miss any of those 4 cold opens, and you miss the structure of the season. The Wire does not work this way. The Wire trusts that life is messy and that meaning accumulates rather than getting dropped on you all at once. Breaking Bad is the opposite. Breaking Bad has the patience of a watchmaker and the timing of a magician. The 2 shows even handle their characters' deaths in opposite ways because of this difference in shape. In Breaking Bad, big deaths are events. They are timed. They are placed at the end of episodes, sometimes at the end of seasons, and the show takes its time letting them land. The death of Gus Fring at the end of Season 4 is one long, beautiful, awful piece of staging, and the show holds on it. The death of Hank Schrader near the end of Season 5 lands with the weight of a season-long buildup. These deaths feel earned because the show has been moving toward them for hours, sometimes years. In The Wire, big deaths often happen in the middle of an episode, almost casually. Stringer Bell, one of the most important characters on the show, gets shot to death in the second-to-last episode of Season 3, with 2 episodes left in his arc. He has just enough time to realize what is happening before it happens. The scene is quick. The show does not pause to mourn. It moves on to the next thing, because in a city, when a person dies, the city does not pause either. Omar Little, the most beloved character on the show, gets shot in the back of the head in a corner store by a child, midway through Season 5, and the scene is over in seconds. The newspaper does not even cover his death. His body gets a tag on its toe at the morgue. The tag gets accidentally swapped with another body's tag for a moment. That is his send-off. Both ways of handling death are honest. Breaking Bad's deaths feel like the climaxes of long stories, because the people who die have been the centers of long stories. The Wire's deaths feel like things that happen to people, because in cities, things happen to people. And the things do not always come with music or warning. There is a real cost to each shape, though, and both shows paid it. The Wire's novel structure made the show hard to find an audience for while it was airing. New viewers could not just drop in. You could not turn on a random episode of Season 4 and follow what was going on the way you could with most other television. You had to start at the beginning and read the book in order. The show was nominated for almost no major awards during its original run. It never won an Emmy for any of its writing or acting. The viewership stayed modest the entire time it was on. HBO came close to canceling it more than once, and Simon had to fight to get the final 2 seasons made. Breaking Bad's long film structure had the opposite problem. Because the show was built on tight, season-long arcs of suspense, it actually worked better as a binge than as a weekly experience. The show's real audience explosion came from streaming, when Netflix added the earlier seasons and viewers could watch entire seasons in single sittings. Breaking Bad finished its run with the highest ratings it had ever had, partly because so many people had caught up on Netflix and were now watching the final episodes live. The show won 16 Primetime Emmys, 2 Golden Globes, and a long list of other awards. The structure was built for the moment, and the moment, when streaming finally arrived, rewarded it. What this means in practice is that the 2 shows ask completely different things from the people watching them. Breaking Bad asks you to come along for the ride. Hold on, do not let go. Watch the train of cause and effect run from one end of the track to the other. Every episode is a stop on the same line. The Wire asks you to do something harder. It asks you to read it, to pay attention to small details that will pay off 2 seasons later, to trust the writer when entire episodes seem to be about people you have never met, to accept that the city is the story, and that you will only understand the city if you sit with it patiently, the way a reader sits with a long book over many evenings. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Both demands are valid. Both shows reward what they ask for. But the shape of the demand changes what the show can be about, and what kind of person it can put at the center, and what kind of fall it can give that person. Once you understand that one show is a movie and the other is a book, the next question almost answers itself. If Breaking Bad is the long film about one man who ruins himself, and The Wire is the long novel about one city that ruins everyone, then the 2 shows must contain at least one matching pair of men trying to climb out of the same kind of hole. And they do. One of them makes it out. The other does not. And the difference between those 2 men, more than anything else, is the difference between these 2 shows. Section 5. Walter White and Stringer Bell, 2 versions of the same man. Two men in two cities, in roughly the same years of American television, both decided they were tired of being who they were. Both decided that the way out was business. Both started reading. Both started keeping notebooks. Both started talking like people they were not, yet, but planned to be soon. Both ended up dead. The deaths were 6 years apart, in two different shows, written by two different sets of writers, and yet the two scenes are basically the same scene, told from opposite sides of the same idea. Walter White and Stringer Bell are the same man, almost. The difference between them is the entire difference between Breaking Bad and The Wire. Start with what they share. Both of them are smart in a way the world around them refuses to reward. Walt is a chemistry teacher with a brilliant scientific mind, working at a high school for a paycheck that barely covers his family's expenses, while a company he co-founded, Gray Matter, has gone on to make billions of dollars without him. Stringer is the second in command of a West Baltimore drug crew, working for a boss, Avon Barksdale, whose instincts are entirely about violence and street pride. Both men look around, see who is on top, and conclude something painful and true. They are smarter than the people winning. They should be running the operation. The world has misfiled them. Both of them respond the same way. They go back to school. Walt does not literally enroll, but he uses the lab and the chemistry and his own teaching habits as a constant reminder of what he is capable of. He treats his meth cooking as an applied science class. Every batch is a problem. Every problem has a solution. And the purity of his blue meth becomes the proof of his identity. Stringer literally goes to school. He enrolls in macroeconomics classes at Baltimore City Community College. He sits in lecture halls. He takes notes. There is a famous moment in a meeting where one of the dealers under him starts talking, and Stringer, running the meeting like a corporate boardroom, asks why the man is taking minutes during a criminal conspiracy. The men who work for him do not understand the world he is trying to build. They are still on the corner. He thinks he is left. Both men keep books on their shelves that are meant to mark them as something other than gangsters. Stringer keeps a copy of Adam Smith's book, The Wealth of Nations. Walt is more subtle about it, but the show keeps showing him with the chemistry textbooks, the careful equipment, the labeled containers. Both men want the world to walk into their living room and see the books and conclude, this is not a thug. This is a businessman. This is a thinker. This is somebody who reads. They are constructing identities the way other people construct alibis. Both of them invent new selves to live inside. Walt names his other self Heisenberg, after the German physicist Werner Heisenberg, who is famous for the idea that the act of measuring something changes the thing being measured. The name is not random. Walt picks a scientist who is associated with uncertainty, with the idea that observation itself is a kind of force. He is announcing, with the name, that he is no longer the person you think he is. Stringer does not give himself a code name. He just walks into a different uniform. Suits instead of street clothes. A clean apartment with modern furniture and tasteful art on the walls. After his death, when the police search his place, they find an apartment that does not look like a drug kingpin lives in it. It looks like a young executive lives in it. Stringer had been dressing for a job he had not yet been given. Now look at what each man wants the new identity to do for him. This is where the two shows split apart, even though the surface looks identical. Walt wants Heisenberg to win. He wants the new self to take over. He wants to stop being the small, embarrassed chemistry teacher who once let his old college girlfriend and his old college partner buy him out of gray matter for $5,000. He wants to be feared. He wants to be respected in rooms where, at the start of the show, he he would not have been allowed to sit down. He gets there. By season 5, Heisenberg has more or less eaten Walt. The kind man with the green shirt and the careful smile is mostly gone. And what remains is a person who can poison a child, threaten his wife, and watch a teenage boy get shot in the head while he stands across the lot doing nothing. Heisenberg wins, completely, and that victory is the show's tragedy. Stringer wants the opposite. Stringer does not want his new self to take over. He wants his new self to replace the old one entirely. He wants to stop being a gangster. He wants to be a real estate developer, with legitimate buildings and legal contracts, and a name that can appear in the newspaper without a police charge attached. He believes, deeply and sincerely, that a man can simply step out of one life and into another if he is smart enough and reads the right books. He believes the criminal world he came from is a kind of starting line, a temporary place where men accumulate the money they need to graduate to the real economy. He thinks he has graduated. He has not graduated. The world he is trying to enter is not a meritocracy. It is its own corner, run by its own kinds of people, with its own kinds of rules, and those rules have nothing to do with how many books he has read. There is a politician on the wire named Clay Davis, a state senator who specializes in taking money from criminals under the promise that he can move things along through his connections. Stringer hands Clay Davis hundreds of thousands of dollars to help push along his real estate development. Clay Davis takes the money. Nothing happens. Stringer has been conned. The man he thought was his ticket into the legitimate world treated him exactly the way Stringer treated the desperate addicts on his corners, as a mark. When Stringer realizes this, the realization is one of the worst moments on The Wire, because it is the moment the dream dies. He turns, almost in panic, to a man who actually understands real estate, his lawyer, and demands to know what is happening. The lawyer, almost gently, explains that this is how the world works. People who have always had power do not let new people in just because the new people have money. This is not a problem you can solve with sharper math. The look on Idris Elba's face in that scene is the entire show in 20 seconds. Stringer Bell, the man who kept Adam Smith on his shelf, has just found out that Adam Smith was lying. Walt never has that scene. He cannot have that scene. Breaking Bad is not built to ask whether the systems above its main character are rigged. Breaking Bad is built to ask whether the man himself is rotten. The answer the show gives, slowly, is yes. The cancer was an excuse. The money was an excuse. The family was an excuse. Walt did it because he liked it, and because he was good at it, and because every other version of his life made him feel small. Walt is not stopped by the systems above him. He is stopped by his own pride, by his own brother-in-law who finally figures it out, by his own choices dragged behind him for years, finally piling up high enough to bury him. Stringer is stopped by something completely different. The systems he is trying to climb into are above him in a way Walt never even has to think about. Even after all his careful work, all his careful study, all his legitimate-looking suits, Stringer is still a black man from a Baltimore housing project, trying to put his money into a city run by old white developers and corrupt politicians. The world is not arranged for his kind of upward motion. The world is arranged to take his money and laugh at him for thinking he had earned a seat at the table. He will never figure that out completely. He dies still believing he could have made it work if he had been a little smarter, a little earlier. The deaths bring this contrast into the cleanest possible focus. Stringer is killed at a construction site for one of his real estate projects, a half-built apartment building in West Baltimore. He is wearing a coat, He is not on a corner. He is not in a stash house. He is at his work, the kind of work he had told himself he had earned. Two men corner him there. Omar Little, a stick-up man with an old grudge against the Barksdale crew, and Brother Muzan, a hitman from New York who Stringer once tried to get killed. Stringer figures out, in his last seconds, that his own boss and lifelong friend, Avon Barksdale, has betrayed him to set up this meeting. He tries to bargain. He tries to reason. He runs out of reasons. He says, somberly, "Well, get on with it." And they shoot him. He dies inside the dream. The walls of the building he was developing are the last walls he ever sees. The dream did not save him. It killed him faster, because his ambition had separated him from the only people who would have protected him on the street. Walt is killed in a meth lab. Not his old meth lab, the lab of the men who took his empire from him at the end of the show. He has come back to that lab one last time, with a homemade machine gun in the trunk of his car. And he wipes the men out, frees Jesse, and then looks down to find that he himself has been hit by one of his own bullets. He is alone. He walks slowly through the lab, touching the equipment, half smiling. The camera pulls back. The police have arrived. Walt is dead on the floor of a meth lab, surrounded by the steel tanks and clear tubing of the only work that ever made him feel alive. He dies inside the new self he built. The dream did save him, in a sense. He got to be Heisenberg all the way to the end. The cost was everyone else. Two men, two cities, two attempts to use a book and a class and a clean apartment to step out of who they were and into who they wanted to be. One of them got there and lost everything else along the way. The other never got there, no matter how hard he ran, because the door he was knocking on was never going to open for him. Breaking Bad is the show where a man can change himself completely if he is willing to pay the price. The Wire is the show where a man can change himself as much as he wants, and the city will still treat him like the man he was on the day he was born. Both endings are tragedies. They're just tragedies about different things. Walt's tragedy is private. He becomes the worst version of himself, and that version eats everyone he loves. Stringer's tragedy is public. He tries to become a better version of himself, and the system shrugs and walks past him. Walt fails up. Stringer succeeds at the wrong thing, and then dies anyway. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. If this is the right way to look at the two shows, then the cameras and the writing and the structure all start to make sense for a different reason. A show that wants to follow one man into hell needs to keep that man in close-up almost constantly, and needs to make the world around him bend to the force of his face. A show that wants to follow a city as it grinds 20 different men down at once needs to spread its attention thin, and needs to refuse to make any one of those faces into a hero. Once you understand who is at the center of each show, the way each show holds its camera starts to look like the only possible answer to a question that was decided years before the first scene was filmed. Section 6. The Anti-Hero versus the Ensemble. Count the faces. That is the easiest way to start. Pick any random hour of Breaking Bad. Sit with a notebook and write down every speaking character who appears in the episode. The list will be short. Most episodes contain 6 to 10 people who say more than one line, and most of those people will be talking either to Walter White or about Walter White. Pick any random hour of The Wire. Do the same exercise. The list will be 3 or 4 times as long. By the time you finish a season of The Wire, you will have a notebook with more than 70 speaking parts, possibly more than 100, depending on how strict you are about what counts as speaking. By the time you finish a season of Breaking Bad, your notebook will fit on one page. That is the simplest way to see what the two shows are doing. One is built around a face, the other is built around a crowd. Bryan Cranston, the actor playing Walter White, is in almost every minute of Breaking Bad. He is in the cold open of nearly every episode. He is in the closing shot of nearly every episode. The story is told from his side of the room. When the camera is on someone else, the camera is usually waiting for him to come back. Cranston has said in interviews that the role basically owned 5 years of his life, because there was almost no episode he could skip and almost no scene he could sit out. He is the engine of the show, and the show pulls everything else along behind him. The other actors on Breaking Bad are some of the best performers in modern television. Aaron Paul as Jesse Pinkman, Anna Gunn as Skylar White, Dean Norris as Hank Schrader, Giancarlo Esposito as Gus Fring, Jonathan Banks as Mike Ehrmantraut, Bob Odenkirk as Saul Goodman. Each of them has the kind of presence that could carry their own show, and a few of them eventually did. But inside Breaking Bad, every one of them is defined by their relationship to Walt. Jesse is Walt's partner. Skylar is Walt's wife. Hank is Walt's brother-in-law and the cop chasing him. Gus is Walt's rival. Mike is Walt's muscle and conscience. Saul is Walt's lawyer and shield. Pull Walt out of any of those descriptions, and the character does not have a clear job inside the show. Now do the same exercise with The Wire. Pick the major characters. Jimmy McNulty, the homicide detective. Bunk Moreland, his partner. Lester Freeman, the older detective who turns out to be the best police on the show. Cedric Daniels, the lieutenant who keeps trying to do real police work inside a department that punishes real police work. Kima Greggs, the detective whose home life never quite fits her job. Omar Little, the stick-up man who robs drug dealers and walks the city with a shotgun under his coat, whistling a children's song. Stringer Bell, the second in command of the Barksdale drug crew. Avon Barksdale, the boss. D'Angelo Barksdale, Avon's nephew, the youngest of the crew leaders. Bubbles, a heroin addict and police informant. Marlo Stanfield, the cold young dealer who eventually rises up to challenge the older bosses. Tommy Carcetti, the ambitious city councilman who will eventually run for mayor. Bunny Colvin, the old police major who tries to legalize drugs in his district. Frank Sabatka, the dock workers union leader. Dookie, Randy, Namond, Michael, the 4 boys in middle school. Roland Przybylewski, the cop who turns into a teacher. That is not an ensemble. That is a population. And every person on that list could carry their own season. In fact, several of them did. Season 2 belongs mostly to Frank Sabatka. Season 3 leans heavily on Bunny Colvin. Season 4 is anchored by the 4 boys. The Wire keeps shifting which characters are at the center of the frame, season after season, the way a long Russian novel keeps shifting which family is in focus, chapter after chapter. This is not a coincidence. It is the result of 2 different ideas about where drama lives. Vince Gilligan and his writing room treat drama as something that lives inside one person. The interesting question for them is what happens to a man over time? How does the small choice on Tuesday turn into the bigger choice on Friday, turn into the unthinkable choice next year? The way you study that question is by holding the camera on one face for a very long time and watching the face change. You cannot do that if the camera is also studying 20 other faces. You have to pick. Gilligan picked Walt. and the entire show is built to give Cranston's face the screen time it needs to do the job. This means that other characters in Breaking Bad sometimes get less than they deserve. Skylar White is a good example. Anna Gunn's performance as Skylar is one of the best things in the show, because she has the unrewarding job of being the sane person in the marriage, and yet still has to make Skylar feel like a real woman with her own desires and her own anger, and her own kind of cunning. Skylar eventually does some very dark things. She launders money. She lies to investigators. She protects the empire even after she has begun to hate the man running it. There are entire seasons of television that could be made about Skylar White. Breaking Bad does not make them. Skylar exists in the show because Walt has a wife, and the show needs to know how the wife reacts. When Skylar is alone, the show is usually waiting for her to come back into a scene with Walt. The same is true of Hank, of Marie, of Jesse, of almost everyone except Walt. They each get great moments. They each get great hours. But they live in orbit. The center of the system is Walt's face, and the planets all bend toward it. The Wire makes the opposite trade. By spreading its attention across so many characters, it sometimes loses the kind of intense identification a viewer feels with one person on screen. There is no minute of The Wire that hits the way the closing minute of the Breaking Bad episode Ozymandias hits, where you have spent 5 years watching one face, and now that face is broken, and you cannot look away. The Wire does not have a face that earns that kind of weight, because it never lets one face stay in the frame long enough to gather it. What The Wire offers instead is something rarer. By the end of 5 seasons, the viewer knows the city. Not in the way you know a setting on a normal television show, where you know the diner and the police station and the apartment, but in the way you know a real place where you used to live. You know which corner is whose. You know which detective drinks at which bar. You know how a young dealer moves up from running money for older boys to standing on his own corner, to being killed in an alley behind that corner before he turns 19. You know that the school across the street from that corner has the same kids in its classrooms, and that those kids will be on that corner in 3 years, and that the new kids will be in that school by then, and that this has been going for generations and is going to keep going. The knowledge The Wire builds is bigger than any one person and slower to develop than any single arc. But once you have it, it is the kind of knowledge no one protagonist show can ever give you. There is a moment in Season 4 of The Wire that shows what this kind of writing can do. The 4 boys, Dookie, Randy, Namond, and Michael, are all in the same middle school class together at the start of the season. They are friends. They throw water balloons at bullies. They make each other laugh. They are children. By the end of the season, the 4 of them have split into 4 different fates. Namond has been adopted by Bunny Colvin and pulled out of the corner life. Randy has been beaten so badly that his foster mother no longer wants him. Dookie has been pushed out of school because he is too old for the grade he is in and is starting to drift toward heroin. Michael, the toughest and most loyal of the 4, has signed up to work as a soldier for Marlo Stanfield's drug crew and has just committed his first murder. They started as the same kind of boy. They ended up split 4 ways. The show makes you watch each split happen, slowly, across 13 episodes, with no music swelling and no speeches. You cannot do that in Breaking Bad. The shape of Breaking Bad will not let you. Breaking Bad has one boy at its center, Walt's son, Walt Jr., and the show treats him with care. But Walt Jr. is mostly there to show what Walt is sacrificing. He does not get the kind of independent fate the 4 Wire boys get. The frame of Breaking Bad cannot bend that wide. Both kinds of writing are valid. Both produce great television. They are simply answering different questions. If the question is, how does one human being become a monster? Then you need a single face, held in close-up, across many hours, with everyone else drawn back, to give that face room to change. Breaking Bad is the best version of that show ever made. The Wire could not give you that experience because The Wire was never trying to. If the question is, how does a city break a generation of children? Then you need a wide camera and a long bench of characters. And you need to watch the children grow up and fail in different directions. And you need to keep the camera off any one of their faces long enough that you stop expecting any of them to win. The Wire is the best version of that show ever made. Breaking Bad could not give you that experience because Breaking Bad was never trying to. There is a craft cost to each path, and both shows paid it. Breaking Bad's ensemble is thinner than it would be in a show that gave its other characters more room. Female characters in Breaking Bad sometimes feel pinched because the show is so focused on Walt that the women's inner lives are not given the same exploration the men get. Smaller characters, including a number of the Mexican cartel members and the lower-level dealers in Walt's orbit, sometimes function more as scenery than as people. The show's defenders will argue this is the point, that we are seeing the world through Walt's eyes, and Walt is too consumed with himself to see other people fully. The show's critics will argue that this is a limitation. Both arguments have weight. The Wire's lack of a single hero made the show harder to find an audience for, slower to start, and easier to misunderstand on a single-episode basis. It never won a Primetime Emmy for any of its writing or acting during its original run, which is one of the most striking awards show oversights in modern television history. The show built its reputation slowly, after the fact, mostly by word of mouth, on streaming services, with viewers passing it from one person to the next. That long climb to recognition is partly the cost of refusing to give people one face to follow. So pick your trade. A camera that loves one face, with a story that lets that face change all the way down to nothing. A camera that loves a whole city, with a story that watches 20 faces refuse to change at all. Two answers to the same old question of how television gets inside a viewer's head. One answer is louder. The other answer is wider. Both answers are honest. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. If both shows are honest about how they are built, though, then the next question is about what each one of them is actually saying. Saying about America, about the corner, about why people sell drugs and why other people buy them, and why the war between those two groups never ends. Both shows are set inside that war. Both shows have very strong opinions about it. And those opinions, when you put them next to each other, line up almost exactly on top of each other in places, and snap completely apart in others. Section 7. Amsterdam versus Heisenberg. Two theories of the drug war. In Season 3 of The Wire, an old police major named Bunny Colvin gets tired. He has been a cop in West Baltimore for almost his entire adult life. He has watched the same corners produce the same dealers, who get arrested and replaced by the same kind of younger dealers, who get shot or arrested and replaced again, decade after decade, while the neighborhood gets worse and the bodies pile higher. He is months away from retirement. His pension is locked in. He decides to try something nobody else has the protection or the willingness to try. He picks 3 small areas of his district. They are mostly empty, boarded-up houses, trash-filled lots. Almost nobody lives there anymore. He calls his dealers in for a meeting and explains the rules. From now on, if you sell drugs inside these 3 zones, the police will leave you alone. If you sell drugs anywhere else in this district, we will come down on you so hard that you will wish you had moved. He does not ask permission. He does not tell his bosses. He just does it. The dealers, after a confused stretch where they cannot believe he is serious, start moving. Within a few weeks, the corners that used to be war zones go quiet. Children play on sidewalks where there used to be shootings. Old women sit on stoops without ducking. The drug trade is still happening, but it is happening over there, in the empty zones, where almost nobody can be hurt by it. The new arrangement gets a name from the people inside it: Amsterdam. After Amsterdam, the European city famous for its loose drug laws. Bunny's plan works. The numbers prove it. After 5 weeks, felonies in his district drop by 14%. That kind of crime drop is unheard of in real police work. Real reformers spend their careers trying to get a 1 or 2% reduction. Colvin has bought a 14% reduction in 5 weeks by essentially doing the one thing the war on drugs has always refused to do, which is to admit that the war cannot be won and to stop fighting it where it cannot be won. Then the system finds out. His commanding officer, who initially does not know what is happening, eventually figures it out and reports up. The mayor's office has a small panic about whether to spin the experiment as a public health win. They decide it is too dangerous politically. The federal government threatens to pull funding from the city if Amsterdam is not shut down immediately. Colvin gets called in front of his bosses. He is told he will be the public face of failure. He is forced to retire at a lower rank than he had earned, with a smaller pension. A job offer he had lined up at Johns Hopkins University, running campus security, gets pulled because his commissioner personally calls Hopkins to make sure the offer disappears. Colvin walks out of his career holding a smaller check and the same useless badge he had walked in with. The Amsterdam zones get bulldozed. The dealers go back to the old corners. The shootings start again. The system protects itself. That is the Amsterdam story in The Wire's 3rd season, and it is one of the cleanest, hardest pieces of writing about the war on drugs that American television has ever produced. Bunny Colvin tried to do the unthinkable. The unthinkable worked. The system destroyed him for trying it. Now look at Breaking Bad. The same war on drugs is being fought, in the same years, on the other side of the country. The Drug Enforcement Administration agents in Albuquerque are doing the same job the Baltimore cops are doing, more or less. The dealers are doing the same job the Baltimore dealers are doing, more or less. The war is just as old. The bodies are just as many. The laws are just as failed. Breaking Bad is happening inside the same broken machine that The Wire is taking apart. Walter White, in the world of Breaking Bad, is not built like Bunny Colvin. Walt is not trying to fix the system. Walt is not trying to reform anything. Walt looks at the same broken machine that Colvin looks at, and Walt sees a market. That is the cleanest way to understand the difference. The Wire is interested in what the war on drugs does to the people forced to fight it on both sides. The cops and the dealers and the addicts and the children, all trapped inside a fight that nobody is allowed to end. Breaking Bad is interested in what the war on drugs makes possible for a man clever enough to take advantage of it. The same set of laws that puts Bunny Colvin in an impossible position is the set of laws that gives Walter White his entire career. Without the war on drugs, the price of meth collapses. Without the war on drugs, there is no Heisenberg. This is the part most viewers never quite say out loud. Walter White's empire is built on the war on drugs. It is built on prohibition. It is built on the fact that the American government has decided to keep methamphetamine illegal and to spend billions of dollars trying to stop people from buying it, which keeps the price high enough that an unemployed chemistry teacher with a basic recreational vehicle can become a multi-millionaire in 2 years by cooking it well. If meth were legal and produced in regulated factories, Walt would have stayed a chemistry teacher. The whole show would not exist. Breaking Bad is, in a quiet, never-stated way, a show about what the war on drugs does to the kind of man who, in another country, would have been managing a small lab somewhere safe. The show does not say this directly. The show is too focused on Walt's soul to step back and say it out loud. But it does not have to say it. The economic logic is right there in every scene. The blue meth is so valuable because it is illegal. The cartel is so violent because the drug trade is illegal. The DEA is so powerful because the drug trade is illegal. Strip away the law, and the entire engine of the show grinds to a stop. The Wire says this constantly, on purpose, with every tool it has. Bunny Colvin's Hamsterdam is not the only place the show makes the argument. There is a moment in Season 1 where one of the younger officers, Ellis Carver, is talking with his partner about why they are losing. He says, "You call something a war, and pretty soon, everybody is going to be acting like warriors. And when you are at war, you need an enemy. And pretty soon, everybody on every corner is going to be your enemy. And the neighborhood you are supposed to be policing, that is just occupied territory." The line is one of the most quoted in the show because it puts into a few sentences what the show spends 50-something episodes proving. That is the argument The Wire keeps making. The war on drugs is not a war you can win, because the people you are fighting are the people you are supposed to be protecting. They live in the same houses. They go to the same schools. They are the same families. When you treat the corner like a battlefield, you do not get rid of the corner. You just turn the entire neighborhood into a place where the cops and the kids look at each other like enemies. Real police work, the kind Lester Freeman does, the kind the wiretap unit does when they are allowed to do it, takes years and produces small numbers of high-quality arrests. Stat-chasing police work, the kind the bosses demand, produces giant numbers of arrests of low-level kids who are immediately replaced. The system rewards the wrong kind of police work, because the wrong kind of police work makes the politicians look like they are doing something. The system punishes the right kind of police work, because the right kind of police work takes too long and exposes too many people whose names the politicians do not want to hear. The whole show is structured to prove this point. The first season ends with the police arresting Avon Barksdale and his crew. Within months of his arrest, his organization is being run by Stringer Bell, his second in command, with no real disruption to the drug supply. By the time Stringer is killed, a new crew, Marlowe Stanfield's, is rising to take the territory. By the time Marlowe is taken down, in Season 5, the show ends with a long montage of new young dealers stepping into the roles the old ones used to fill. Michael, one of the 4 boys from Season 4, has become the new Omar, robbing dealers in the street with a shotgun. Dookie, another of the 4 boys, has fallen into heroin and is shooting up with the older men in an alley. The corner refills itself. The war goes on. Nobody wins. Nobody is supposed to win. Breaking Bad does not make this point because the show is not interested in the corner. The show is interested in Walt. So the war on drugs becomes, inside the world of Breaking Bad, a kind of weather system. It is the condition the story is happening inside, but it is not the thing the story is about. The DEA agents, including Walt's brother-in-law Hank, are presented sympathetically and competently.
The cartel members on the other side are presented as monsters. The middle space, where ordinary people in ordinary neighborhoods are being ground up by both sides, the space The Wire spends almost all of its time inside, is largely missing from Breaking Bad.
There is one famous moment in Breaking Bad where the show briefly glances toward the kind of analysis The Wire is built on. Jesse Pinkman, Walt's partner, finds out that the meth they are cooking is being sold by a crew that uses a child to commit murders for them. Jesse is horrified. He wants to do something about it. Walt, in a private moment, watches Jesse care and then makes the decision that locks in his villainy for the rest of the show. Walt poisons the child himself, deliberately, in order to manipulate Jesse back to his side. Walt uses the same kid that the coroner uses. The coroner uses children because they cannot be charged as adults. Walt uses the same child because doing so will make his partner emotional and easier to control. The two kinds of cruelty rhyme. The show does not pause on the rhyme, it moves on. But the rhyme is there, and once you have seen The Wire, you cannot unsee it. Breaking Bad keeps brushing past the same problem that The Wire has built itself around. It is just looking at it from the inside of one man's head, instead of from the outside, where the problem actually lives. So, two theories of the drug war. Theory 1, from The Wire. The war is unwinnable. It is producing the violence it pretends to be solving. It is destroying the neighborhoods it pretends to be protecting. It is creating the dealers it pretends to be arresting. The only people who profit from it are politicians who get elected on tough-on-crime promises, and the older men inside the trade who use the war's violence to keep their soldiers loyal. Everyone else, on every side of the line, is being used by the war. The only honest response, on the part of someone inside the system, is to try a small, illegal act of common sense, like Amsterdam. The system will then crush you for doing it. Theory 2, from Breaking Bad. The war creates strange opportunities for unusual men. Most people get destroyed by it. A few people, with the right combination of brains and cruelty and timing, can ride it for a while. The story of those few people is interesting because of what it reveals about them, not what it reveals about the war. The war is a backdrop. The man is the foreground. If the man falls, it is because he chose to fall, not because the war pushed him. The war is just the weather he happened to be standing in. You can hold both theories in your head at once. They do not contradict each other so much as they look at the same fight from two different camera positions. One camera is up high, watching the whole battlefield. The other camera is at chest level, following one soldier into the smoke. Both views are real. Both views are partial. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. What both shows do agree on, though, more than the surface differences would suggest, is that the children at the edges of the fight are the ones who pay the most. Both shows have moments where they pull the camera back and look at a child who has been pulled into the war by adults. And both shows hold on those children long enough that the viewer cannot pretend the kid was just an extra. And it is in those moments, more than anywhere else, that the two shows finally come close to making the same argument, even though they are using completely different cameras to make it. Section 8. Season 4 of The Wire and Season 5 of Breaking Bad, where each show peaks. Every great long-running show has the moment where it is no longer just good. The moment where it stops being a show you watch and starts being a thing that has happened to you. For The Wire, that moment is Season 4. For Breaking Bad, that moment is the back half of Season 5, and especially one specific episode in it. Both peaks are the result of years of careful building. Both peaks are the show finally showing you what it has been trying to tell you all along. They peak in completely different shapes, in completely different keys, but both of them feel, while you are watching, like the show has reached the top of the mountain it had been climbing. Season 4 of The Wire begins in summer. School is out. 4 boys in their early teens are spending their last days of vacation throwing water balloons full of urine at neighborhood bullies. Dookie, Randy, Namond, Michael. They live in the same Baltimore neighborhood. They go to the same school. They are friends, in the loose, flexible way that boys are friends at that age, where everyone knows everyone's mother, and everyone knows everyone's problems, but nobody has to talk about either one out loud. Each of the boys carries a different version of the same trap. Dookie is the poorest. His parents are addicts. His clothes smell. The other kids tease him for it. Randy is the entrepreneur. He is funny, sharp, full of small business ideas. He sells candy at school. He has a foster mother who actually cares about him, which makes him the lucky one in the group, although he does not know it yet. Namond is the most dramatic of the 4. His father, Weebay, is a former enforcer for the Barksdale crew, currently serving a life sentence for multiple murders. His mother, Delonda, pushes Namond toward the corner because she misses the money his father used to bring in. Namond does not actually want any of it. He has a soft, theatrical side. The corner does not suit him, but his mother will not allow him to be anything else. Michael is the strongest of the 4. Quiet, loyal, protective of his younger brother. The kind of boy adults look at and think, this one is going to be okay. This one is too smart to fall. By the end of season 4, 3 of those 4 boys have fallen. Dookie is too old for his middle school grade by the school's rules. They push him into high school even though he is not ready. He cannot keep up. He starts skipping. Mr. Przybylewski, his old teacher, the former cop, tries to help him, gives him money, lets him hang around the classroom in the afternoons. None of it is enough. By the end of the season, Dookie is doing odd jobs for an older heroin user named Bug, sleeping rough, slipping toward the same drugs that destroyed his parents. Randy gets caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. He gives information to the police, and through a chain of leaks and bad luck, the wrong people find out he is a snitch. His foster mother's house gets firebombed. She is badly burned. He gets pulled out of her care and put into a group home. The boy who started the season selling candy and laughing at his own jokes ends the season hardened, suspicious, no longer trusting anyone. The last time the show looks at him, he is being beaten in the group home by older boys. The show does not even give that beating a clean shot. It just lets it happen in the background. Namond gets the rescue. Bunny Colvin, the same retired police major who tried Amsterdam in season 3, has been pulled into a school program studying the most disruptive boys in middle school. Namond is one of them. Bunny watches Namond carefully and starts to see what nobody else has seen, which is that Namond is not actually built for the corner, no matter how hard his mother is pushing him there. By the end of the season, Bunny is fighting to take Namond out of his mother's home and adopt him. He goes to visit Weebay in prison. He asks the imprisoned father to give up his son to a stranger. Weebay, who has spent his life around violence, looks at Bunny and looks at his wife, and finally, quietly, agrees. He tells Delonda in front of Bunny that Namond is going to live with the Colvins now. The boy who was the loudest and most dramatic of the 4 gets the only happy ending in the entire season. Michael, the strong, quiet one, signs up with Marlo Stanfield's crew. Marlo is the new young drug boss rising in West Baltimore, colder and more violent than Avon and Stringer ever were. Michael does not want to sell drugs.
Michael wants to protect his little brother from his stepfather, who has been abusing both of them. Michael needs Marlowe's muscle, so he trades in. By the end of season 4,
Michael has committed his first murder. He is 14 years old. He has just become a soldier in a drug crew that will spend season 5 disposing of bodies in vacant houses across Baltimore. The toughest of the 4 boys, the one the adults thought was going to be fine, has fallen the hardest. The coroner has gotten exactly what it wanted from him. 3 of them fell. 1 of them got out. 3 out of 4. 75% failure rate. That number is not a writing accident. Ed Burns, the co-creator of The Wire, has said in interviews that 75% failure is probably an underestimate of what actually happens to those kinds of boys in those kinds of neighborhoods in real life. The 4-boy story arc is not a tragedy invented by the show. It is the show holding up a magnifying glass to a process that has been going on in Baltimore and in dozens of American cities like it for decades. The corner refills itself by feeding on children. The school cannot save them. The system cannot save them. One man with a steady hand and a strong wife can save 1 boy. The other 3 keep falling. That is what season 4 of The Wire does. Slowly, across 13 episodes. It puts you with 4 boys at the start of a school year. It walks you through their year. It lets you watch them split apart. By the time the season ends, you know all 4 of them. You know how they laugh. You know how they cry. You know what they look like when they are scared. And you know, with a kind of clean, terrible certainty, why 3 of them ended up where they ended up. The whole season is the show's thesis statement made into a story you cannot argue with. Now turn to Breaking Bad. Season 5 of Breaking Bad is broken into 2 halves. The first half, sometimes called Season 5A, follows Walt at the height of his empire. He has killed Gus Fring at the end of Season 4. He has taken over the meth trade for the entire region. The money is rolling in faster than his wife can launder it. He is, briefly, the king he always told himself he should be. The second half, sometimes called Season 5B, is the fall. Hank Schrader, his brother-in-law, the DEA agent, finally figures out who Heisenberg is. He figures it out while sitting on Walt's toilet, picking up a book, and recognizing the handwriting in the inscription. The most dangerous drug producer in the American Southwest has been sitting at his Thanksgiving table for years. From that moment on, every minute of the show is a slow tightening of the noose around Walt. The episode where the noose finally pulls all the way shut is called Ozymandias. It is the 14th episode of Season 5, the third to last episode of the show. It is widely cited in critic polls and fan polls as the greatest single hour of television ever produced. Both major review websites scored it as the highest-rated episode of any drama ever to air. The title is taken from a poem by Percy Shelley about a giant ancient statue half buried in a desert that used to belong to a great king whose entire kingdom is now gone. The poem is about how everything you build will be erased. The episode opens with a flashback. Walt and Jesse in the desert very early in the show, cooking their first batch of meth out of an old recreational vehicle. It is daylight. Walt is rehearsing the lie he is about to tell his wife on the phone about why he is late coming home. The flashback is meant to remind you who these people used to be, before any of this happened. Then the flashback fades, and we are back in the desert, in the present. But everything has changed. The RV is gone. The meth is gone. Hank Schrader is dying in the dirt with a bullet wound in his leg. White supremacists with assault rifles are standing over him.
Walt is begging for his life. Hank looks at Walt and says calmly, "You are the smartest man I ever met, and you are too stupid to see he made up his mind 10 minutes ago." Then they shoot him. Walt collapses on his knees, screaming silently, while Jesse hides under a car a few feet away. Everything Walt built is being taken from him in real time. The white supremacists steal almost all of his money. They drive away with Jesse to torture him into cooking more meth. Walt is left in the desert with a single barrel of cash and his hands in the dirt. The rest of the episode is the rest of the collapse. Walt rolls his barrel of money through the desert. Walt comes home and tries to force his family to flee with him. His son, Walter Jr., finally finds out what his father is. Walt grabs his baby daughter and drives away. Skylar chases him with a kitchen knife. Walter Jr. tackles his own father to the floor and calls the police on him. Walt makes a phone call to his wife, where he says terrible things to her on a tapped line, partly to take the criminal heat off her, partly because some smaller piece of him actually means them. He drops his baby off at a fire station. He gets in a van bound for a new life. He is gone. Inside one episode, every relationship Walter White built or held on to for 5 seasons is destroyed. His brother-in-law is dead. His wife has tried to stab him. His son has called the police on him. His business is in the hands of the men who killed his brother-in-law. His partner is being held in a cage as a slave cook. His house is empty. His name is on every news channel. Everything he was supposed to be, the family man, the provider, the protector, has been ground into dust on a single day. The episode ends with Walt vanishing into the night, alone, surrounded only by the consequences of every choice he has ever made. That is the Breaking Bad peak. One man, one day, one operatic crash. Now hold the 2 peaks next to each other. Season 4 of The Wire is 13 hours of slow, patient watching. And at the end of it, 4 boys have been split 4 ways by a city that does not care which one of them survives. Ozymandias is 1 hour, almost in real time, in which a single man's entire life is taken from him because of choices he made years ago. Both are devastating. Both are the kind of television that makes people stop talking and just stare for a while after the credits run. They are devastating in opposite directions. The Wire devastates you with the wide shot. Breaking Bad devastates you with the close-up. The Wire devastates you because nobody is the main character of the tragedy, and the tragedy still happens. Breaking Bad devastates you because one man is the main character of the tragedy, and the tragedy still happens. The shape of the grief is different. The size of the grief is the same. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. These peaks are the reason both shows are still talked about. They are the moments that fan polls keep coming back to. They are the proof that long-form American television, in the years between 2002 and 2013, could do things no other medium could do. And yet, the way the world rewarded these 2 shows for their peaks could not have been more different. One peak walked away with armloads of trophies. The other peak walked away with almost nothing. Section 9. The Reception Gap. Emmys versus cult status. The trophy shelves of the 2 shows look almost like a joke if you put them next to each other. Breaking Bad finished its run with 16 Primetime Emmy wins, 2 Golden Globe wins, 6 Writers Guild of America awards, 3 Screen Actors Guild awards, 6 Critics' Choice awards. A pile of supporting trophies. Bryan Cranston won the Emmy for Best Actor in a Drama 4 separate times. Aaron Paul won 3. Anna Gunn won 2. The show won Best Drama Series in its final 2 years on the air, which is the highest single honor a serious American show can win. The Wire finished its run with 2 Primetime Emmy nominations, both for writing. It won 0. Not 0 in some fancy category. 0. Total. Across 5 seasons, 60 episodes, and a writer's room that included some of the best novelists in America, the show never took home a single Emmy of any kind. Not for writing, not for acting, not for directing, not for the show itself. The actors were not even nominated, with the exception of a single nomination for the actor playing the show's most beloved heroin addict.
The biggest awards body in American television looked at one of the greatest shows ever made and decided year after year that nothing inside it was worth a small gold statue. Anyone who has watched both shows tends to find this absurd. Almost every serious list of the greatest American television shows of all time, made in the years since both shows ended, puts The Wire either first or second, usually wrestling with The Sopranos for the top spot. Breaking Bad is almost always somewhere in the same conversation, often in the top 5. Both shows are now treated as the 2 ends of the same golden age. Yet at the time, one was an awards machine and the other was an awards ghost. Why? Part of the answer is the structure of the shows themselves, which we have already walked through. Awards bodies vote on the basis of single episodes submitted for consideration. A voter watches 1 or 2 episodes and decides whether the work in front of them is good. Breaking Bad is built for that. Almost any episode of Breaking Bad, watched alone, is a small piece of suspense that builds toward a clear payoff and ends on a note that lands. The Wire is built the opposite way. Almost any episode of The Wire, watched alone, can feel slow, scattered, full of characters you do not yet know, full of plot threads that will not pay off for another 6 episodes, or sometimes another 2 seasons. The Wire was designed to be a novel. Awards voters were grading short stories. Part of the answer is also about who is on screen. Breaking Bad has a mostly white cast, with a famous lead actor at the center, set in a recognizable American suburb. The Wire has a majority black cast, set inside a real, struggling, mostly black American city, with no single lead. Awards bodies have a long, well-documented history of overlooking shows that decentralize white actors. The Sopranos, set inside an Italian-American crime family in New Jersey, won a pile of Emmys. Mad Men, set inside a Manhattan advertising firm full of white executives, won a pile of Emmys. The Wire, set inside Black West Baltimore, won 0. The pattern is too clean to ignore. The acting is not the problem. Michael K. Williams, who played Omar Little, gave one of the most original performances in modern television and was never nominated for an Emmy a single time. Idris Elba, who played Stringer Bell, was never nominated for the role either. The show had a writing room and a cast deep enough to fill 3 other shows. The trophies stayed somewhere else. Part of the answer is taste. The Wire was, at the time, a difficult show to love. The first season took several episodes to find its feet. The second season made an unpopular decision to shift focus away from the Barksdale crew and onto the docks. New characters showed up every season, while older characters disappeared into the background. The show refused to give viewers a clear hero. It refused to give them satisfying weekly resolutions. It refused to give them anyone to root for cleanly. People who came to it wanting normal television bounced off it. People who stayed had to be the kind of viewer who liked working a little bit while they watched. Awards voters tend to be busy. The show did not make itself easy to admire on first contact. Breaking Bad was the opposite. From the first episode, you knew exactly who the main character was, exactly what he wanted,
and exactly why his predicament was interesting. The show kept tightening, season after season, the way a thriller novel tightens. It rewarded weekly viewing. It rewarded binge viewing. It rewarded any viewer who spent any amount of time inside it. By season 4, when it was clearly a masterclass in storytelling, the awards bodies finally caught up to the audience and started handing it the trophies it had earned 3 seasons earlier. Now look at what happened after both shows ended.
Breaking Bad, when it finished in September 2013, finished as one of the highest-rated cable dramas in American television history. The series finale was watched by more than 10 million people on the night it aired. The show's reputation was already firmly in place. Critics agreed it was great. Audiences agreed it was great. Awards bodies agreed it was great. There was no climb left to make. The show simply continued sitting in the canon where it had earned its seat. The Wire took a completely different path. When it finished in March 2008, its final season had been seen by relatively small numbers of people. HBO had nearly canceled it more than once. Many viewers had still never heard of it. Then streaming arrived. Netflix and HBO's own streaming service made the entire show available in one place, easy to start at the beginning and watch in order, the way Simon had always wanted people to watch it. New viewers found it. They told other viewers about it. The show began a slow, viral climb, year after year, that has never really stopped. Then a strange thing happened. Public figures who had never spoken about it on the air started naming it as their favorite show. President Barack Obama named The Wire as his favorite television series. He singled out Omar Little as his favorite character. He even did a sit-down interview with David Simon during his presidency to discuss the show's arguments about urban policy. Universities began teaching the show in college courses, especially in sociology and urban studies departments. Real cops, real teachers, real journalists, real social workers started saying that the show had captured their professions more accurately than any other piece of fiction. The reputation kept compounding. By the time both shows had been off the air for a decade, the conversation had flipped. Breaking Bad was still hugely respected and still beloved, but the people who liked it tended to talk about it as a great piece of entertainment, a masterclass in storytelling, a thriller that worked. The people who liked The Wire tended to talk about it as something different, as a piece of journalism, as a piece of social science, as a book. You can see this in the kinds of arguments people make for each show today. Defenders of Breaking Bad will tell you about the writing, the acting, the cinematography, the suspense, the plotting. Defenders of The Wire will tell you about the way it changed how they understood their own country. Both kinds of praise are valid. They are praising different kinds of work. Breaking Bad is being praised for the kind of thing television is supposed to be when television is at its best. The Wire is being praised for the kind of thing television almost never is, which is a serious tool for understanding the world. The two shows ended up swapping positions in a sense. Breaking Bad walked off the stage with all the gold and stayed in roughly the same spot in the conversation it had earned by its finale. The Wire walked off with empty hands and slowly, year by year, climbed up into a place no awards body could give it, which is the place certain books reach when generations of readers keep telling each other to read them. The trophies and the canon do not always agree. In this case, they ended up almost completely opposed. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. If both shows are now considered untouchable though, why do people still keep arguing about which one is better? Why does the Twitter debate refuse to die? Why does every long article comparing them end up in the same place? The argument is not really about which show is better. It is about something else. And that something else is what these two shows actually are inside the larger story of American television.
Section 10. Why we still argue about these two shows. The argument never ends. Open any social media app. Type the words Breaking Bad versus The Wire. There is always a thread alive somewhere. Always somebody on one side calling the other side wrong. Always somebody quoting Walter White at the kitchen table. Always somebody quoting Omar Little walking down the alley with his shotgun. The argument has been going for almost 20 years, and it shows no signs of stopping. Every few months, a journalist starts the whole thing over again with a tweet. Within hours, thousands of people are weighing in. The strange thing is, the argument is not really about quality. Almost everyone who has watched both shows agrees that they are both extraordinary. Almost everyone agrees that they are both somewhere in the top 5, top 3, or top 1 of every honest list of the greatest American television dramas. So if both sides agree that both shows are masterpieces, what are they fighting about? They are fighting about what television is for. That is the real argument under the surface. Both shows arrived at almost exactly the same time, in the same medium, on the same kind of cable network, set in roughly the same world of American crime, with roughly the same kind of moral weight. They could have looked similar. They are not similar. They are opposite. And because they are opposite, every time somebody picks one of them as the greatest ever made, that person is actually picking a side in a much older fight about what stories should do. People who pick Breaking Bad tend to believe that the highest job of a story is to follow one human being all the way to the bottom of who they are. They believe that drama, real drama, lives inside a single skull. The world matters in this view, but only as a place where the skull walks around. The story is the person. The person is the story. If a writer can build a single character so completely that the audience knows them better than they know their own neighbors, that is the highest achievement the medium can reach. Walter White is the proof. By the end of Breaking Bad, the audience knows Walter White better than they know almost any character in television history. They have seen every choice he made. They have watched the choices add up. They have watched the man become his own monument and his own grave. People who pick The Wire tend to believe something different. They believe that the highest job of a story is to teach the audience how the world actually works. They believe that drama, real drama, lives in the spaces between people, in the systems that move them around, in the rooms full of small decisions made by people who never meet each other. The character matters in this view, but only as a way of showing how the system grinds. The story is the world. The world is the story. If a writer can build a city so completely that the audience knows it better than they know their own town, that is the highest achievement the medium can reach. Baltimore in The Wire is the proof. By the end of the show, the audience knows that city and the systems running it, in a way no other piece of American fiction has ever managed. Both views are honest. Both views are old. The fight between them is older than television. It is older than film. It is older than the novel. It goes back to the very beginning of storytelling. There have always been writers who believed the soul of a story is one person. And there have always been writers who believed the soul of a story is the world that person walks through. Most of the great writers in history have leaned one way or the other. Shakespeare leans toward the soul. Tolstoy leans toward the world. Charles Dickens leans toward the world. Fyodor Dostoevsky leans toward the soul. The argument has always been there. Breaking Bad and The Wire are just the latest, sharpest version of it on American television. That is why the fight feels personal to people. When somebody says, The Wire is better,
What they often mean is, I think the most important thing a story can do is show me my country. When somebody says, Breaking Bad is better, what they often mean is, I think the most important thing a story can do is take me inside one human heart. Neither answer is wrong. They are different answers. And once you accept that they are answering different questions, the fight starts to look less like a real disagreement and more like two people standing on opposite sides of a building, each describing the side they can see. There is one more layer worth sitting with before this is done. Both shows came out of the same window of years, between roughly the late 90s and the mid-2010s. That period is now sometimes called the golden age of American television. Before that period, television was almost never treated as a serious art form. Movies were the serious form. Television was where you went for entertainment, for sitcoms, for soap operas, for the news. The Sopranos broke the door open in 1999 and proved that television could carry the weight of a real novel. After The Sopranos, the door stayed open for about 15 years, and through that door came a long line of shows that tried, in different ways, to do work that had previously been impossible on a small screen. The Wire and Breaking Bad are the two most extreme examples of that work. The Wire is the side of the door that opens onto serious journalism. Breaking Bad is the side of the door that opens onto serious tragedy. They mark the outside edges of what prestige television was allowed to be during those years. Almost every great show that came after them is, in some way, a child of one or the other. The show's about a single haunted man becoming a worse version of himself. Better Call Saul, which is literally a spin-off of Breaking Bad. Mad Men, Mr. Robot, Ozark. All of those shows owe their structure to Breaking Bad. The show's about a city, an institution, a system that grinds many people at once. Treme, The Deuce, We Own This City. Many of the shows David Simon himself made afterward, plus a long list of imitators. All of those shows owe their structure to The Wire. The two paths split off from these two shows and then ran for the next decade in opposite directions. That split tells you something else, too, about why the argument keeps coming back. People are not really fighting over which show is the best. People are fighting over which path television should keep taking. Television is at a strange moment now. The huge cable hits of the golden age are gone. Streaming services are everywhere. Shows are shorter. Audiences are scattered. The big question of what serious television is for is once again open, the way it was open in 1999. And so the fight over Breaking Bad and The Wire keeps mattering, because the fight is about which kind of show is worth fighting to keep making in the years ahead. The truth is, both kinds are worth keeping. The world needs the kind of storytelling that pulls a single human face into close-up and refuses to look away. The world also needs the kind of storytelling that pulls back to wide shot and refuses to lie about how a city actually works. Most great periods in any storytelling form contain both kinds of writing, working at the same time, in the same rooms, sometimes by the same people. The argument should not be about which is better. The argument should be about how to keep producing both at the level these two shows produced them. It is also worth saying, plainly, that neither show is perfect. Breaking Bad has female characters who sometimes get less attention than they deserve. It can lean a little too operatic in moments where a quieter choice would have hit harder. The Wire has stretches where the writing slows almost to a stop, where new characters need too long to land, where the show's own rules make it hard for new viewers to find their footing. Season 5 of The Wire, with its newspaper plot, is widely seen as the show's weakest year. Season 4 of Breaking Bad, with its long stretches in the meth lab, drags for some viewers. Neither show was ever flawless. They were just both attempting things almost no other show was attempting, and the things they attempted needed every minute they were given. What both shows share, in the end, is a kind of honesty that most television does not even try for. They tell the truth about their characters. They tell the truth about their cities. They tell the truth about the country those cities are inside. They do not flatter the viewer. They do not pretend that good people always win. They do not pretend that bad people always lose. They take their time. They trust the audience. They do the work. Watching both of them in 2026 is a strange experience. The America they were filmed inside is not quite the same America that exists today. The corners of West Baltimore and the desert highways of New Mexico both look slightly older now, like postcards from a country that has moved on a few steps. The shows have not aged badly. They have aged into themselves, the way certain books do, settling deeper into what they always were. They feel less like television the longer they sit on the shelf, and more like documents, records of a moment, snapshots of who America was during the years they were made. 10 years from now, 20 years from now, they will probably still feel that way, only more so. That is the real reason the argument keeps coming back. It is the only argument worth having about either show. Two cameras, two ideas about where stories live, two answers to the same question about America. Both answers are true. Both answers are partial. Both answers needed the other one to exist, to push against, to mark the edges of what the medium could do. The fight goes on because the fight is the point. As long as people are still arguing about Walter White and Stringer Bell, about Amsterdam and Heisenberg, about the man in the desert and the city on the stoop, both shows are still alive. Both shows are still doing the job they were built to do. Both shows are still making people think harder about the country they live in than almost any other piece of television ever has. That is enough. That is more than almost anything else on the small screen has ever managed. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.